Hello everyone, my name is Mantej Singh. I am your host of the podcast Belonging Shift, conversations about leadership, community, place, and the future of belonging. In this podcast, we talk to leaders, practitioners, change makers on the topic of driving belonging and inclusion in our workplaces, in our communities. And I'm so glad to have today with me Zizi Charida, who I've known for many years. Zizi has been in the community development space, a very well-known practitioner for about 30 years, and was the founder and CEO of Community Minds, an organization she founded, led, and worked with young people across the education system in communities. Zizi has now recently started a new organization, which I'm sure will do amazingly well. It's called Zahia Pty Ltd. It's a community development organization, and one of the main prominent initiatives is a Let's Talk community. So welcome, Zizi. It's really good to have you here.
Thank you, Mantej. It's a pleasure to join you, and thanks for having me on your podcast.
Yes, thank you. And so we are here to have a conversation about belonging and what needs to shift, Zizi. And I'm so looking forward to hearing your perspectives on that. Who are you, and why does a sense of belonging matter to you?
Thanks, Mantej. Yeah, we use a lot of labels. I guess people have called me a community development practitioner, community leader, and I just really am, I guess, a person who really cares about community and centering that in our lives and in our world. I've been doing community development work probably for, as you mentioned, close to 3 decades. My father was a refugee, and there was a lot of experiences they went through. So this sense of community and social justice and people having dignity and preserving people's humanity was something I think was with me as a child, and then going into my adult years and graduating university, it's something that I was like, wow, this is really bringing together all the things that matter to me. So I've taken on various roles in the last sort of 28, 29 years, but the core thing in all those roles was really keeping community at the center and building communities kind of like from within, as opposed to kind of externally trying to build community. And I think that's what drives me, is bringing that power back to community and people.
Love it. Bringing power back to people. That's what I'm really passionate about as well. And that is so much needed in today's world. It's giving power back to community. It's giving agency back to community. So in that context, in the context of your work, where does belonging come into it? How would you describe the outcome of belonging if you can't use the word of belonging? What needs to happen?
Great question, Mantej. I love that question. And as much as we use the word belonging, it's such a buzzword. We hear it everywhere. It's on documents, it's in policy, it's in conversation. We talk about it at forums. I think belonging, there's sort of 2 parts to it. Belonging, there are general aspects or parts of the definition of belonging that I think can't be argued. But then belonging does look different to different people. So it's looking at it kind of in both those with that lens. Belonging, the importance of belonging in my work is you can't have community and you can't have healthy, thriving communities if you don't have this thing called belonging. Having said that, I don't think belonging is it's not a noun. To me, it's a verb. It's a doing. And I think where my work I feel like is important is I don't just talk about belonging as a concept. It's something that we actually have to do and live. So it's a way of thinking. It's not a policy, and it's not a practice. It's not something that, you can go to a workshop and someone can say, well, I'm going to, you're going to walk out of here and know how to do belonging. I think it's a journey of learning and a journey of growing. And I think it's also a journey of testing our own assumptions and challenging ourselves.
No, keep going.
Yeah. No, sorry, did you want to ask me something?
No, I'm just curious because I do run belonging workshops. So
No, I didn't mean it like that. No. I think that your work is super important, because you're not putting it on a platter for someone and saying, this is how you do belonging. I think your work is important because you unpack a lot of things around misconceptions of belonging. And even I would say, as far as to say, challenging malpractice. And your work, I guess, highlights that it's a journey of learning and growing as opposed to just arriving somewhere and kind of saying, I can do this perfectly. So as much as it seemed like I was saying it's not important, if anything, your work now is not only, I think, important, it's necessary. Because we do need those tools and that kind of understanding around belonging.
When people are honest and authentic and they can see different perspectives, because that is at the foundation of belonging, then we can recognize and acknowledge someone else with a different perspective of the same situation and see it from their perspective, have empathy for that. And I think that's so crucial for belonging.
And
so let's unpack this a bit further. What would happen if belonging was practiced or as a way of thinking embedded properly? What would happen? What would change with belonging in mind, as opposed to when it was not in play?
That's a good question. I'm going to answer you did ask me in your initial question, what does belonging mean to me? And I think I might just touch on that and then kind of answer this question. So I think when someone says belonging to me, it really is it's a few things. One of them is being able to feel kind of, I guess, seen and heard. So I think that's an important part of belonging. But the big question is, I always kind of ask when we talk about belonging, what are we belonging to? What are we trying to connect to? And more often than not, we find ourselves in situations in a workplace or a community or even a country where we're trying to find this thing called belonging, but sometimes the values don't align, and this can become an issue. So the question of what do I want to belong to is really, really important, because I don't think that we can belong to everything, nor should we belong to everything. But having said that, belonging is an innate, natural desire that we're born with. We're actually social beings. We're community beings. So this connection to something is important. So if I had to define belonging, it would be connection. It would be the acceptance of who I am authentically in a space or place. And it's also the feeling of I can be who I am without feeling what I feel, what I think, what I do, what I practice is threatened. And I think that it's sort of almost like a sense of safety. So belonging for me comes with a level of safety. So it's that sense of I'm okay to be here. I'm respected. I'm seen. I'm heard. People may not agree with me, but there's room for me to be me in that space. Yeah.
No, I think that's really good. And I think as long as that is within the laws and the values of, we should all be allowed to have a sense of belonging, as you said, a sense of connection. To be yourself without feeling threatened is, I think, the core of belonging. So let's build on that further. When you look at this definition that you've created of belonging, you can be yourself without feeling threatened. You can have a different perspective without feeling unsafe. In that space, you reflect on your practice over the last 3 decades and look at now in Australia, in the world, in Sydney, in Western Sydney. What shifts are happening right now in this sector that are changing how people experience belonging?
Yeah, look, I think here's the good news. I think, and a lot of people would argue otherwise, I think we're getting better at it. I do think we are getting better at it. And there's, practitioners like yourself and, others that I know in this space that are actually doing some good work around that and having those really important conversations. I do see that the impact of global events and conflicts is affecting communities, particularly in like Southwest Sydney and Western Sydney where we work. And I feel like that's created a bit of friction in communities across Southwest Sydney. And I think that those, how can I say it? It's those kinds of events that I think are making it harder for us to either feel a sense of belonging, or if you're the dominant culture, because I know this sounds like kind of language of the 90s or 90s, but, if you're part of that mainstream dominant culture, the question I think then becomes, because I think there's a power dynamic, Mantej, when it comes to belonging, because sometimes it's worded in such a way that it's given to people. Like we're gonna make you feel like you belong, or help you feel like you belong, or so it's almost like it's something that is given, whereas it's got to be a two-way. It's obviously a two-way street, but it's like, who are the ones that are talking about belonging in this space? And I think that where it's getting better is that there are more people from diverse backgrounds, and I'm not talking just culturally, I'm talking like the whole spectrum of diversity that are talking about belonging. So we are seeing that, I think, Mantej, which is great, because it was a topic that I feel was dominated by certain people. I think that's shifting, which is good.
Any other shifts that you think are occurring in this space?
What does authentic belonging and inclusion look like? We don't want it just to be in policies or in our strategic plans or things like that, gathering dust on the shelf. We actually want to know how that can work on the ground. And that's why I'm starting to see a lot of organizations moving away from that kind of, I call it surface level. Like that token, like for example, like, our board has a cultural diversity quota we're meeting, or we have a good gender representation. And on the surface, that looks great. But in practice, like, what does it actually look like? And so I'm kind of hearing a bit of cynicism around things like celebrating, cultural diversity days and, what I call kind of like performative actions. And so I can say, to answer your question around the shift, is I am seeing a shift around leaders. We're talking like senior positions and managers in charities, community organizations, local councils, having that conversation around how do we go from the token, harmony day, or let's have a cultural potluck day where we all bring dishes from our culture and have a lovely day. I think we are getting a bit more serious about what does it look like to have a culture of belonging rather than a policy of belonging.
I think that is so well said, Zizi, and that's kind of one of the reasons, and that's the driving force behind the work that I'm doing as well, is to go from that surface level, performative, tokenistic inclusion and belonging, to actually to go to practically how do we do this. And I think that is so important. So I'm really glad you raised that point. And I want to sort of understand from you, in your opinion, as these shifts that you are saying are occurring, what in your opinion do leaders and institutions commonly misunderstand about this and get wrong, so to speak?
Yeah. I think there's a couple of things. I think that a lot of managers and leaders get into the let's fix it mode. So I think that a lot of managers tend to isolate the issue and bring it back on the person as the problem rather than the actual system being the problem, right? If I had to advise leaders or managers, it'd be don't just look at the person and isolate that issue. Look at more broadly, what's your workplace culture actually saying about you as an organization? For me, workplace culture is really about the interactions that happen formally and informally. So you might, as an organization, have all the right policies, all the right kind of formal, I guess, sort of practices. They look good, you're doing the right thing, but are we creating a space where people do actually feel like they're belonging and can connect? So it's a lot of different things, and it's not about being perfect. So my advice would be that we're not going to make everyone happy all the time. Belonging isn't about that. It's having a space where we're actually saying, hey, there are going to be sometimes a bit of friction. There are going to be those differences, but it's actually being in a space where you're safe, psychologically and physically safe, to allow those differences and those frictions to happen in that. But I guess for leaders, I think just really having authentic, open conversations, get to know your staff and teams on a very personal level. I think it's really important to ask people, what does belonging mean to you? Just like you're asking me, and getting people's perspective on these are the things that actually make me feel seen, heard, and valued.
So seen, heard, valued, and being open to listening to people. And I think those are really great ingredients for belonging. And I think if I can add to that, once you've heard, you made people safe and they've expressed to you, it's a commitment to acknowledging it and not diminishing what is being said. And it's a commitment to doing something about it. Because I think a lot of the time, belonging and inclusion and all of this fails when you've heard everything, people have expressed, be vulnerable, told what's impacting them, and we are so caught up in the momentum that we have, that we've created, that we are not able to say, no, but this is not working, I've got to shift and change and accept that what I had designed isn't working well for a lot of people. And I've got to, and it's ego, isn't it? You to acknowledge that what you had envisioned, the pathway, has to stop, that you were wrong, and you've got to do this differently now.
It's really hard to be challenged on something, particularly if it's a thought that you've held for a long time. But there's another thing to this, Mantej. Belonging isn't something given. It's a dance. It's relational. It's not transactional. So the solutions are never top down. It must come from the bottom up. So in other words, we need to have those conversations around what is belonging. And I think belonging, it's a word, right? Like there's a lot of things that sit around belonging. So I think belonging is something that we need, but we all have a part to play. Even the person that doesn't feel that sense of belonging has a part to play. And I think that gets missed a lot, because a lot of conversations, Mantej, as you would know, would be like, oh, these are all the things we can do to help people feel like they belong. But there's a responsibility we all have in creating that sense of belonging for everyone.
What I'm hearing from this conversation is belonging can either be given and belonging can either be demanded.
Exactly.
And it sits somewhere in that space between giving it to somebody and demanding it from someone. It's a space where we have to do that dance together of belonging, as you say.
Dance. You think about it, Mantej, it's not an entitlement.
Yes.
Belonging is a human need and desire that we need fulfilled. And that's why it's dangerous. And I'm going to say this sounds like a bit out there, but it's dangerous, particularly with children and young people. If we don't create the environment or the soil in which they feel like they are connected to something that's important and that accepts and embraces them, they will look for something or someone that does that. And that something or someone may not be healthy for them.
I think that is beautifully said, Zizi, because that happens all over the world. If you don't feel genuine belongings, somebody else fills that void, and probably is not healthy, and that causes harm to people, to society, and that's not what we want.
Absolutely.
And I want people to walk away from these conversations with listening about what are the things they need to shift. So my final question to you, Zizi, is in your opinion, what are the shifts? And by shifts, I mean practical things people need to do differently or stop doing or start doing in order to create a sense of belonging in our workplaces, in our communities, in our society.
All right. Well, the first one is belonging isn't a destination. It's a continuous journey. That's the first one. It's not something that, and again, it's people like you, Mantej, that are really important. That's why I encourage people, don't just engage Mantej as a one-off, you need to be engaged on an ongoing basis, because I think it's something that we really need to work on as part of a journey, right? And I think we've sort of touched on that before, where we don't want it just to be a flash in the pan kind of thing. So that's the first thing. The second thing would be, don't just tick a box. So move away from the surface level kind of broad expectations we have, and get a bit more authentic and genuine in your interactions, and as well as the decisions you're making as a leader. Really think about, what does that say to you? What does that say to others internally in your organization, but also externally? Such and such program, we've ticked all these boxes. So I think they're all great. I'm not trying to minimize or diminish those important things, Mantej, but there needs to be more added to that to actually create what I call a culture of belonging. I guess the other thing too is, don't just jump into something if there is some friction or there is a case where someone isn't feeling a sense of belonging. I think we need to move away from that, let's fix this problem, but look at it from a bit of a bird's eye view of your organization and kind of say, okay, so we have this issue, but more broadly as an organization, what are some systemic issues do we need to address so that there is this sort of culture of belonging? The fourth thing is, as much as we try to help people feel included and we're well intended in that, sometimes it can come across as a bit, offensive and token. And I think because they think they have to do a certain thing to help someone feel like a sense of belonging. But I feel like you have to have conversations before you actually propose a solution. So There's a thing I call, and that I teach this to people, it's called connections before content. So make connections first, and then naturally a solution or a proposition that you have is going to be more effective. The fifth one would probably be test your assumptions and always check in with yourself, because belonging, as external as it seems, is first an internal process. So check yourself, be open to learning, admit when you're wrong. And also, I think, as much as, like I said, belonging is an external thing because we want to belong to something, I think the best thing that we can do on an individual level, and this is to everybody, not just to leaders, Mantej, is if we can learn to belong to ourselves, and by that I mean be true to your own values, what you care about, be authentically yourself. And I think that that's the first process of belonging before we even feel any need to connect to something externally to us. I know that's a whole other talk show. It's a whole other segment. But I think we need to understand that belonging isn't this external thing that sits outside of us. It sits within us and then gets translated externally.
Zizi, I was quiet because it was so beautifully said. In the last 5 minutes, you've almost brought down years of experience and wisdom in this last 2-3 minutes. And I think I'm really thankful to you for that. And we have to get away from this fix-it mindset that we have to do it to people or give it to people. It starts with self, and it starts with looking at system. And it needs this way of working, which is about building connection, testing assumptions, acknowledging when you're wrong, and being on this mindset. So it's not something you tick off, but you have to be in this state of mind on a daily, regular basis, and your authenticity in approaching belonging.
Totally. It does start with that leader, and what you talk about and how you talk about it gets trickled down all the way to the bottom of your organization.
Yeah, Zizi, thank you so much. Really great points. And I am sure many leaders who are looking at this and hearing at this from a position of self-awareness, and who are sort of genuinely approaching how do they make a shift towards belonging, will really take a lot from this conversation and your wisdom. Thank you so much for your time. This is Mantej Singh, your host for the Belonging Shift podcast. If you need somebody to help you on your belonging journey, reach out to Zizi or reach out to me or any other person that you think can guide you in your journey, that you connect with, that you have a sense of belonging with. And if this episode and this conversation sparked a new idea, a challenge, a possibility, share it with your network, stay connected, and let's have more conversations about belonging, particularly implementing belonging. Thank you, Zizi. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
have a great
Mantej.
day.